Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Andy Sinclair and I'm one of the instructors here at Bristol Ground School. I have a short video here for you today on a subject I've been looking at more closely recently, mass and balance. When studying mass and balance, we come across a number of different definitions associated with the mass of an aircraft. These can be confusing, and in this short video I want to touch on a few of them and, with the help of some definitions from the Part FCL learning objectives, the LOs, try and provide some clarity. Okay, so we're sat on the ramp, fully loaded, ready for engine start. Our mass at this time is called the taxi mass or ramp mass. Okay, so after we start our engines, there may be a short period of time where we burn fuel before we actually start to taxi. For the purposes of describing a scenario in an EASA or UKCA/TK exam question, this small fuel burn is ignored. And our mass is still referred to as the taxi mass or ramp mass as we start to taxi. These are one and the same thing. This taxi/ramp mass is subject to a maximum limit, and this is called the maximum structural taxi mass or maximum structural ramp mass. As the name implies, the maximum structural taxi mass is a structural limit, and it's based on the strength of the airframe, particularly the wing root, and it's the maximum permissible total mass of an aircraft at the commencement of taxiing. Okay, so we taxi from ramp, we line up on the departure runway, and our mass reduces as we consume fuel. At the beginning of the takeoff run, our mass is now called the takeoff mass. The takeoff mass is defined in the LOs as the mass of an aircraft, including everything and everyone carried at the commencement of the takeoff run. Our takeoff mass is subject to the lower of two limits: the maximum structural takeoff mass, MSTOM, and the performance limited takeoff mass, PLTOM. The maximum structural takeoff mass is, as the name implies, a structural limit, and it's defined as the maximum permissible total mass of an aircraft at the commencement of takeoff. It represents the maximum mass at which the aircraft can take off anywhere in the world in the most favourable conditions in accordance with the Certificate of Airworthiness. Really, it simply removes any departure airfield considerations. In contrast to the maximum structural takeoff mass, the performance limited takeoff mass is the takeoff mass limited by departure airfield considerations, runway length, obstacles, temperature and altitude. The lower of the maximum structural takeoff mass and the performance limited takeoff mass is called the regulated takeoff mass. Now, having completed our flight, we land safely. Our mass at this point is called, unsurprisingly, the landing mass. The landing mass is, again, subject to limits both structural and performance. In the same vein as the maximum structural takeoff mass, the maximum structural landing mass is based on the aircraft's structural limit. The performance limited landing mass is, again, limited by airfield considerations, runway length, obstacles, temperature and altitude. The lower of the maximum structural landing mass and the performance limited landing mass is the regulated landing mass. Okay, so that seems straightforward at the moment. We have regulated takeoff mass, we have regulated landing mass, then we bump into a term, allowed takeoff mass. Surely you're not allowed to take off with a mass greater than the regulated takeoff mass, or for that matter, any other takeoff mass limit. Well, if you think about it, under certain circumstances, perhaps short sector with a very distant alternate destination, which requires substantial diversion fuel, it's quite possible to take off under the regulated takeoff mass, but after flying the short sector, be in a position where the aircraft is landing heavier than the regulated landing mass. To avoid this, we need to work back from the regulated landing mass, add the trip fuel and the taxi fuel to make sure that the taxi ramp mass will result in a landing at or under the regulated landing mass once we've taxi and trip fuel been used. This leads to the concept of allowed takeoff mass, which is defined as the mass taking into consideration all possible limitations for takeoff, including restrictions caused by regulated takeoff mass and regulated landing mass. I guess you could think of it as a regulator defines the regulated masses, really only considering that you depart under the regulated takeoff mass and you arrive under the regulated landing mass. But if you have to jettison fuel to get below the regulated landing mass en route, well, it's the aircraft operator that won't allow that, given it's a huge waste of money and resources. Hence, the operator restricts the takeoff mass at or below the allowed takeoff mass. I hope this short video has helped your understanding. Toodaloo!